There are millions of men walking around right now who, from the outside, look completely fine. They go to work, they go to the gym, they play games with their friends, they scroll through TikTok, they watch football, they laugh out stupid memes, they answer messages, they show up to family events. They might even be the person in the group who's constantly making everyone else laugh. But when they finally get home, close the bedroom door, and they're completely alone, something changes. The distractions disappear. And suddenly, they realize just how unhappy they actually are. I think there's a form of depression among men that we don't talk about enough. It's not necessarily the stereotypical image of somebody crying in bed every day or being completely unable to function. Sometimes depression looks completely normal. Sometimes it's waking up, going to work, coming home, eating something, playing video games, scrolling for a few hours, going to sleep, and repeating the exact same routine tomorrow. You're functioning, but you're not really living. And the scary thing is that you can live like this for months, maybe even years, before you realize something is wrong. So today I want to talk about why so many men are completely depressed. Ask most men how they're doing, and you'll probably get one of these answers. You say to them how they're doing. They'll probably say, "Oh, I'm good. I'm all right. I'm fine." And sometimes that's generally true, but sometimes "I'm all right" actually means I don't even know how to explain what I'm feeling, so I'm just going to tell you that I'm fine. A lot of men become incredibly good at hiding when they're struggling. You learn how to switch it off temporarily. You go into work mode, you go into gym mode, you go out with friends. Someone tells a joke and you're laughing 5 seconds later. Then you get into your car after everyone leaves and suddenly you're sitting there in complete silence. That's the side of someone's life that nobody sees. And I think one reason men become so good at hiding these feelings is because many of us generally don't know how to talk about them. You might know something isn't right, but you can't necessarily put it into words. You're not happy. You're not completely miserable either. You're just existing. Everything feels slightly gray. Things that used to excite you don't hit the same anymore. You don't necessarily want to die, even though I don't encourage it. You just don't feel particularly excited about living tomorrow either. And because you're still going to work and taking care of your responsibilities, you convince yourself that you can't possibly be struggling. But functioning and being happy are two completely different things. And I think one of the biggest problems facing young men today is how repetitive adult life can become. Thinking about the average working week. You wake up, you get ready, you commute, you work for 8 to 9 hours, you commute back home, you eat, you have maybe 3 to 4 hours to yourself, then you go to sleep. And then tomorrow you do it again. Monday to Tuesday, Tuesday becomes Wednesday, Wednesday becomes Thursday. Eventually months start disappearing and suddenly you're thinking, it's already August? This is why I think so many adults become obsessed with nostalgia. We look at being kids and remembering how exciting everything felt. Summer holidays felt endless, seeing your friends was exciting, Christmases felt magical, getting a new game felt like the greatest thing that ever happened. Even a random Friday can become a memory you remembered for 20 years. And then adulthood arrives, and then somehow life becomes appointments, petrol, bills, emails, shifts, and waiting for the weekend. And for some men, there's this terrifying thought underneath everything. Is this it? Am I going to do this for another 40 years? That's where depression can quietly creep in. Not necessarily because something catastrophic happened, but because nothing is happening. You're just alive, but you don't feel like you're going anywhere. Another major problem is loneliness. And loneliness doesn't necessarily mean literally having nobody around you. Like you can have coworkers, you can have friends, you can have family, you can have hundreds of followers online and still feel incredibly lonely. But there's a difference between being around people and actually feeling understood by people. Male friendships can be particularly strange in this way. You can spend 4 hours playing PlayStation with your friend, talking about football, argue about Call of Duty, send each other the most ridiculous memes imaginable, and neither one of you will mention that you're both struggling. Sometimes two men can be going through almost the exact same thing and neither knows because both are pretending everything is fine. And then as you get older, maintaining friendships becomes harder. People move away, people get married, people have children, people become consumed by work. The group chat gets quieter. The weekly meetup becomes a monthly meetup. Monthly becomes we need to catch up sometime soon. And then 6 months pass. For men who don't have strong relationships outside of work, that isolation can become brutal. And social media doesn't necessarily solve it. If anything, sometimes it makes it worse. Because now you can be lonely while watching everyone else appear to have the greatest life imaginable. Think about this now. You open Instagram for 10 minutes and you'll see someone your age driving a Lamborghini. Someone else bought a house. Someone started a business. Someone has the perfect relationship. Someone has an incredible physique. Someone is traveling around Thailand. Someone just made 100 grand and you're sitting there eating cereal, wondering what you're doing with your life. Logically, you know social media isn't reality, but emotionally, comparison still gets you because you're comparing your ordinary Tuesday afternoon to somebody else's greatest moment of the year. And for men, success can become deeply connected to self-worth. If you're not earning enough money, you feel behind. If you don't have a girlfriend, you feel unwanted. If you're overweight, you feel unattractive. If you don't have your career figured out, you feel like you failed. If you're living at home, you might feel embarrassed. If your friends are progressing faster than you, you start wondering what's wrong with you. Eventually, your life becomes one enormous scoreboard: money, body, career, relationships, followers, houses, cards, and there's always someone beating you. And that's a game you can never win. So what happens when reality doesn't feel particularly good? You escape from it. And I'm not judging anyone for doing this because practically everybody does it in some form. Video games, porn, alcohol, food, TikTok, YouTube, Netflix, gambling, constantly going out. Even obsessively working or going to the gym can become a form of escape. The problem isn't necessarily the activity itself. Like, I love going to the gym. I love food. I love gaming. I love YouTube. There's nothing inherently wrong with enjoying these things. The question is, what happens when the distraction stops? Can you sit alone with your own thoughts without immediately needing stimulation? Because if every quiet moment makes you uncomfortable, there might be something underneath that you're avoiding. Sometimes you'll see a guy finish work, get home, immediately put his headset on, play until midnight, go to sleep, and repeat the process tomorrow. And again, gaming isn't necessarily the problem. The question is, what are you escaping from? Because eventually you have to take the headset off. And men feel like they have to fix everything by themselves. There's this mentality that a lot of men, every problem has to be solved alone. You're struggling financially, you have to work harder. If you're alone and you're lonely, deal with it. You're depressed, go to the gym. You're heartbroken, move on. You're overwhelmed, stop complaining. You're sad, get over it. And yes, personal responsibility is important. Exercise helps. Discipline helps. Working towards something helps. But sometimes you need another human being. Sometimes you need to tell somebody, I'm actually not doing very well. And that's incredibly difficult for some men to say because vulnerability feels like handing somebody a weapon and trusting them not to use it against you. So instead, men just bottle things up. One problem becomes 5 problems. 5 problems become 10. And then eventually something tiny happens. Maybe an argument, a bad day at work, or someone canceling the plans. And suddenly years of frustration come pouring out. Everyone around them wonders, where did that come from? It didn't come from nowhere. It's been building quietly for years. I think one of the biggest things a man can lose is a sense of purpose. Now, when I say purpose, I don't mean you don't need to discover some magical destiny. No. Purpose can be incredibly simple, like training for your first 5K, learning a language, building a business, making YouTube videos, training for a marathon, becoming a better father, saving money, learning to cook, getting stronger, helping your family, volunteering, creating something. That specific goal isn't the important part. What's important is having something in your future that makes you want to see tomorrow. Because when you have absolutely nothing to look forward to, life starts feeling like an endless waiting room. Work, weekend, payday, work, weekend, repeat. You need something that belongs to you. Something that reminds you that your life isn't finished yet. And if you're watching this and you're currently in that place where everything feels meaningless, I'm not going to tell you to wake up tomorrow at 5 a.m., run 10 kilometers, start a business, meditate for an hour, and completely transform your life. No, I'm not going to do that. Because when you're already struggling, even the most basic things can feel difficult. Start smaller, like clean your room, for example. Go take a shower. Go outside for 20 minutes. Message a friend you haven't spoken to recently. Eat something decent. Don't eat like crap. Train. Write down what's actually bothering you. Book an appointment with a therapist or with a doctor if you think you need professional support. Do one thing that makes tomorrow slightly easier, then do another tomorrow. You don't rebuild your entire life in one motivational afternoon. You rebuild it through hundreds of boring little decisions that eventually start pointing you in a different direction. And most importantly, talk to somebody. You don't have to dump your whole entire life story onto them. You can literally just start with, look, man, I've just been feeling a little bit off recently. That's it. And then you just start from there. So there's probably somebody watching this video late at night with headphones on who hasn't told anybody how they're actually feeling. Maybe your friends think you're doing fine. Maybe your family thinks you're doing fine. Your coworkers think you're doing fine. And maybe you've become so good at pretending that even you've started to believe it. But if you're struggling, don't wait until you've completely fallen apart before you decide your problems are serious enough to deserve attention. You don't need to have the worst life in the world to admit you're unhappy. You don't need to prove that you're suffering. And asking for help doesn't mean you failed some test of masculinity. Sometimes being strong means recognizing that whatever you've been doing isn't working anymore. So talk to someone, change something, give yourself something to work towards. And don't convince yourself that because the last few months or even the last few years have been difficult, the rest of your life has already been decided. There are people you haven't met yet, places you haven't visited, experiences you haven't had, versions of yourself that you haven't become. There are random days in your future that will eventually become some of the greatest memories in your life. You just haven't lived them yet. If you're quietly struggling right now, please don't disappear into yourself. You deserve the opportunity to find out what happens next. And if this video describes something you've been feeling recently, you don't have to write your entire life story in the comments. Just leave a simple, I'm still here. Sometimes knowing you're not the only one going for it is enough to make tonight feel a little less lonely. Take care of yourselves, lads. Thank you all so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed this commentary, please leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new. And tell me what you're going through right now in the comments, because I'm bound to reply to them and give you the best advice I could. Thank you all so much once again, and I'll see you all in the next one.